Good evening, and welcome to the July 12th, 2022 version of the Downers Grove Village Council. I am your Mayor Pro Tem, Greg Jose. Mayor Barnett has walked off to look for America, and so I will be running tonight's meeting. Would you all please rise and join us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett. Commissioner Jose.
Here.
Commissioner Wallace.
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit.
Here.
Commissioner Cullivaney.
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin.
Here.
Commissioner Glover.
Here.
Thank you. That brings us to item 3, minutes of prior council meetings. Do we have a motion with regard to the minutes?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move that the council adopt the Village Council meeting minutes from July 5th, 2022 as presented.
Second.
Any comments, questions, or corrections with regard to the minutes? Any public comment?
Regarding the minutes?
On the minutes. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That matter passes unanimously. That brings us to the consent agenda. Item 4. May I have a motion with regard to the consent agenda?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Wallace.
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit.
Aye.
Commissioner Glover.
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cullivaney.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jose.
Aye. That matter passes unanimously. That brings us to our active agenda. We have several items on the active agenda tonight. There will be an opportunity for public comment on each one. We have previously workshopped these items, so if you don't hear a whole lot from the council, that's why. We've already had a lot to say about them previously. May I have a motion with regard to item A? The question was, would there be public comment before the vote? The way the procedure works, there needs to be a motion and a second for the item to be properly before the body, at which point comments both from the council and the public will be taken.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to amend the total project budget for the Facilities Replacement and Sustainability Plan to $60,426,027, consistent with the updated financial plan, and to authorize expenditures of the FF&E and other soft cost allowances and the owner's contingency consistent with the approved design development plans as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any public comments with regard to item A? Please come on down to the podium. We'd love to hear from you.
See how my eyesight does here, guys. So, first of all, guys, thank you for letting me be part of your meeting. My name is Joe Phillips. I'm a 32-year resident of Downers Grove, living at 840 J Drive. I'm a retired CPA, a retired management consulting, big project partner, and a retired utility executive. That helps in terms of understanding my comments on this project. First of all, I'd like to thank Dave and his entire staff. I think Downers Grove is an absolutely well-run community, so I would just like to thank Dave and his staff for everything they do. Okay, so just on a positive note. And my comments might sound a little pokey today, guys, so we have to separate the issue from the people. I appreciate everything you guys do in terms of being up there and all that kind of good stuff, but occasionally there's an issue, so I'm going to be pokey on the issue. So I apologize ahead of time, all right? So I like everybody, guys. I like everybody, all right? Okay, so what am I asking for? I'm asking for, this is obviously related to the facility replacement plan. I think you need to allow the community to be aware of the project. Guys, nobody knows this project's going on. No one knows you approved it. I've talked with real estate attorneys, neighbors. Nobody knows you're doing it. This thing has gone on way so long. Everyone thinks it's dead because there was a referendum. Nobody that I have talked to, other than people in here, knows what's going on. So I don't believe you met your fiduciary responsibilities letting the community understand you're about to spend the amount of money you're about to spend. Number two, whenever you do a project like this, guys, you gotta cost justify it. I have seen nothing in here that this project is cost justified. Okay? Rule 101 for capital expenditures is cost justification. Talk to any executive anywhere, and they will tell you that. If you want me to help you understand it, I'll be happy to help you understand it. Specifically, the project is $60.4 million, I believe, if I've heard the number correctly. That, guys, that exceeds the entire revenue for Downers Grove for a year. I looked at your last year's budget, and I believe, guys, it's 54.4, if I have my numbers relatively correct. So this is material. It's not a little thing, guys. This is big. And I'd argue, and potentially Dave, I'm not sure if you can respond to these questions now, but I don't think there's been any project of this size in my recent history in my 30 years here in the community. So Dave, has there been any expenditure of $60 million in the last 30 years?
We spend, our typical budget is well into the $100 million mark. There may not be one single expenditure that's $60 million.
We're clearing one single expenditure. We're not about the maintenance of the roads, the staff, the policemen, all.
Hang on, Joe, we're not going to get into a back and forth.
Right.
You've got 5 minutes for public comment, and I'm happy to give it all.
I'll keep going.
all
I'll keep going. I'll keep going.
All
I don't want my 5 minutes to be consumed by this. Okay, your plan doesn't include all cost. So you're misrepresenting the cost of the project, specifically hazardous waste removal, stormwater, moving costs, temporary permanent utility installation and usage, communication tower removal, a 2% project contingency. You got to be kidding me. 2%. That's a joke in capital projects. Cost benefit, we already talked about none. Option comparison, haven't seen one. Lack of visibility to critical oversight. It feels like you guys are trying to hide the project. You're trying to slip it through. Okay, this version is version X of the facilities plan. It's not the first time we do it. It's fifth time, sixth time, seventh time. We know there was a referendum on it. The community said no. You're choosing not to ask the community to something they have said no to. Professional, this is going to hurt a little bit, guys. I believe you have...
Just now?
Huh?
Sorry. Go ahead.
Professional dishonesty. I believe right now you're dishonest in your communication. You buried the meeting notion. I know that the fireworks were canceled over the weekend, but I don't know you're about to spend $60 million. Interesting. I had to go 3 pages into your homepage, but you took the effort to let people know the fireworks were canceled. So thank you. That's surely the most important thing in the community, right? Expectations. You said explicitly, without the need for additional property taxes. Should I show you the document that you sent out to the community? Is everyone familiar with that? Is everyone familiar with that? You explicitly stated, without the need for additional property taxes. Well, unfortunately, there is $26 million in new stolen taxes. There's $5 million that you just approved last night. It's in the page 24. Look at page 24 of your document. That's your motion. Look at it, page 24 of your motion. There is $5 million in new property taxes explicitly. You're taking $5 million from gasoline. What does gasoline have to do with a new village hall? Gasoline tax has nothing to do with a village hall. $4.4 million in District 58 retiring bonds. $12.6 million in capital maturing bonds. I believe that's related to the fire station. That was approved for the fire station. That's what the community expected. $24 million in fund gimmicks. Guys, as a CPA, I understand fund accounting. I'm sure everyone up there understands it as well. $10.8 million from the major building funds. $8 million from the capital project funds. $3 million operating fund surplus. $3 million, $1.5 million over the last 2 years. That money should be refunded to reduce your budget, not slip it from one fund to the other fund. That is a accounting gimmick that is not honest when you tell people it's not costing anything. $1.5 million police seizure. 0.7 in stormwater. How in the heck can stormwater fund this project? How am I taking $250,000 of stormwater to fund this project? You gotta be kidding me. On a positive note, you do have $10 million of new revenue. You said you're selling the land for $2.5 million. Hope you have a buyer for it. And you got $6+ million for TIF. Okay? You have not communicated a project. You're dishonest in your communication. Okay? I would just ask you, slow down, get this project, get a capital project that makes sense to the community, not just the 7 people up there. Someone told me the other day,
Joe,
please don't
I
misconstrue.
cut you off a couple of times, so I gave you a little extra time, but you're at about 6.5 minutes now. Could you wrap it up,
Gotcha.
please?
Unfortunately, you didn't tell me about the 5 minutes when I began, sir. Please don't misconstrue political will. This is my last statement. Please don't construe political will, which I think one of your commissioners said that to me over the weekend.
Yeah,
We're
that was
not going through a business thought-out process. You're not doing it, and I disagree with what you're doing. And when the community finds out what you did, you're going to have problems, in my opinion.
Thank you, Joe. Any other public comment
About this matter or about anything in general?
about this particular matter? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council. Ordinarily, I would throw it to my colleagues first, but I'm going to go ahead and start. So when I moved to town in 2007, the Village of Downers Grove was talking about its facilities challenges, specifically the police station and this building. Fast forward to 2013, it was one of the first things we started talking about after I joined this council, and we've literally been talking about it ever since. The idea that somehow we are hiding the ball or engaged in dishonesty or something like that is plainly and demonstrably false. Now, I'm not going to go through the history of every single iteration of the facilities project, but at my request, staff put together a list that's online, and it's probably available with regard to, or on the tables over here with the agendas if you'd like to pick one up. But it's definitely available online, downers.us. Staff responses to council questions, and it lists the 14 facilities-related topics, 14 different times. This village council has discussed the Facilities Replacement Sustainability Plan, the FRSP, 14 times. That's, does that include the open house that we had? I believe it does. Not to mention the various videos that were put together, the social media, and now the mailings, which, Mr. Phillips, you received along with every other resident in the village. If folks did not know that this project was going on, then they weren't paying attention, number one. Number two, I can tell you that having run for election in this village for this office 3 different times, I've been talking about facilities each time. And I spent a lot of time on doors, on social media, what have you, talking to people about needing to solve this problem. And I know that many of my colleagues have done the same. You talked about the size of the purchase. Yes, building a building of the size that we're going to build gets expensive. Is it more than our general fund budget? Yeah, it probably is, but we're not buying it in 1 year. We're paying for it over many, many years. We've got a substantial down payment, to be sure, but the bonds that will be used in order to pay the rest will be financed over 30 years, much like a mortgage when you buy your house. Very few people, at least that I know, buy a home for cash. The contingency is in line with exactly what our professionals are telling us, and it's in line with my own experience in construction. This council went out to referendum in 2014. It does not have to. This is a home rule community. The referendum said what it said with regard to one particular iteration of a project. This is dramatically different from that project. And the community, time and again, has said that this problem needs to be solved, and we're solving it. The use of stormwater funds, if you take a look at the project plans and the permeable pavers and the other items that are going to be used in order to improve the stormwater quality and the stormwater discharge coming off of this property, you'll see exactly why we're spending stormwater funds on it. all of the other items that are being used to pay for it are taxes that are already being levied, so that we don't have to engage in any additional taxation other than what is absolutely necessary. Over the period of the last few months, have we seen rampant inflation? Absolutely. Does that impact everybody in our village? Yes, it does. That includes this village council and the building that we're about to build. If we had built it a couple of years ago, it would have been built without any additional tax revenue necessary. That is likely not to be the case now, unfortunately. There is nothing that we can do about the larger economic conditions around us. But we do know that, as Mayor Tully used to say, unlike a fine wine, this building and the police station across the parking lot is not going to get any better with additional age. This is a project that has needed to be done, and it will be done now. Thinking of that, I've been spending a lot of time today thinking about the countless members of the village council over the last 15 years that have been talking about this project and have contributed to pushing that boulder up the hill. In particular, Mayor Tully, who stopped by coffee with the council this past Saturday. This project's been a long time coming, and I want to say thank you to everyone on council and on staff and in the community who has had any role in pushing this boulder up the hill until we reach the peak. It is about time that we approve this contract and build this building. And I am, for one, proud to do it. Any other comments from my colleagues? Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if you are curious about everything in the past, we have a website that is www.downers.us/facilities. It was an FAQ page that we put up a year or two ago. It was sometime during COVID, because we were getting so many questions about the history of the project as well as the conversations that we've had, so they're all archived in one nifty little area. And if you want to know a real breakdown of all of the costs, you can go to last week's meeting agenda. So if you go to downers.us, the archived meetings, and you look at the meeting agenda from last week, you'll see on page 6 of the project budget amendment item where there's essentially a line item list of what all of the costs are going to be. So these things are out there, and feel free to reach out if you're not sure where they are. But I will just echo everything that Mayor Pro Tem Jose said, and do I wish that the financial environment that we were in is different? Sure, but considering we didn't know what was going to come with COVID, we also don't know what's going to come in the next 5 years, and we know that we have serious issues with this building and serious issues with the police building, including some security things that we just need to improve upon. So this project needs to get done, and I'm excited to move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Colavani?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jose?
Aye. That matter passes unanimously. May I have a motion with regard to item B?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion approving a resolution authorizing execution of an amendment to Exhibit A of the AIA A133 agreement between the Village of Downers Grove and Leopardo Companies Incorporated as construction manager/constructor as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments on item B from members of the public? Members of the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Colavani?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jose?
Aye. That matter passes unanimously. May I have a motion with regard to item C?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing execution of an intergovernmental lease agreement between the Village of Downers Grove and Board of Education of Downers Grove Grade School District 58 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments from the members of the public with regard to item C? Members of the council? I'd just like to thank District 58 for being willing to come into the new building with us. We have 80-something% shared taxpayers. This is a big savings for all of our taxpayers. District 58 building its own building or leasing its own building outside of the village's sphere would simply cost our taxpayers more money. This is an exercise in getting to smaller government and is a positive for everyone. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Colavani?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jose?
Aye. That matter passes unanimously. May I have a motion with regard to item D?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to authorize staff to pursue traffic safety improvements on Main Street and Highland Avenue near Downers Grove North High School as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from members of the public with regard to item D? Members of the council? Commissioner Colavani.
Yeah, I had one additional comment as a result of last week's discussion. There was a lot of back and forth around safety of the bike lanes. And from my experience, for bike lanes to work in Downers Grove, suburban drivers are going to have to drive differently. And with that, I speak with a lot of experience. I was an Uber driver for several years. And on the very first night, I had to learn to drive differently. And one of the big differences, and one of the things that happens in the suburbs all the time, is people sneak through the stop sign, start making a turn to the right because there are no cars to the right. And you get this indelible impression of a bike rider slamming his hand on top of your roof and realizing, I just cut that guy off. And then from that point in time, you always had to look right, look in the rearview mirror, no one, and to check to see that no one was coming up on the right on the bike lane. And then the whole idea of this notion where you don't stop behind the line and you cross the crosswalk, that doesn't work in the city of Chicago because there are just so many more pedestrians. We don't have as many bike drivers that are riding their bikes by necessity because we have too many parking spaces and our garages are too big and our driveways are too big, so they don't have to. In the city, they're forced to because it costs about $200 to $300 a month just to park your car in the north side of the city. So it's going to be a learning curve, and we're just going to have to do the best we can to help educate people that there are bike riders coming up on your right. You can't just turn in front of them.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilmartin.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure that it's understood. This motion that we're voting on tonight is just to allow staff to move forward in planning, getting approval. We're not voting on actually approving this change to Main Street and Highland. We talked a good bit about it last week. And I appreciate all of my fellow commissioners and the mayor's feedback on this. I think we seemingly share a concern about traffic diversion, but based on what we have seen from the analysis, I think I'm feeling more and more comfortable supporting this. I think the bike lanes are something that I've been interested in, and certainly with all due respect, I think we know drivers need to be more cautious, but I think it's one of the good first steps that we as a village can take to encourage non-motorized transportation. Safety is something that we as a village have been and continue to take very seriously. I think these efforts are in line with what we are looking to do in that regards, and I think while this is a change, I do believe it's important for us to continue to pursue this, look into it, and then ultimately we can decide as a council if we feel it's the right thing. But I appreciate all the hard work that has gone into this, all the consideration. Main Street is our main street, and so we want to be very cognizant of that. But I think this is an important thing to move forward with, and I plan on voting yes for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'd just like to add my thanks to staff and District 99 for all of their work. When the concept of a road diet was first brought up, the first time I heard about it was probably 13 or 14 with our initial bike and pedestrian plan. I didn't like it. I was not initially disposed to be in favor of this plan. But when you look at the studies that have been done, when you look at the modeling of this particular area, and you see that the impact in one direction makes traffic clear a little bit quicker, a few seconds quicker, and then the other direction, just a couple of seconds, it takes a couple of seconds longer. When you're adding to the overall safety of the area, I don't see how you wouldn't continue to move forward with this. Traffic diversion is a concern, absolutely. I share that concern, and I know everyone up here does. I'm heartened by the fact that moving from Ogden south, going kind of around and back to Main Street would be pretty difficult. You'd have to start all the way back at Saratoga because of the way the streets are blocked off due to North High. I think coming north, it's because the traffic is not going to clear more than a couple of seconds slower, the risk is minimal. And so I'd like to continue to move forward. Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Cullivaney?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jose?
Aye. That matter passes unanimously. That concludes our active agenda and brings us to our first reading. This is an opportunity to workshop items, hear from staff for the first time on them, get comments from members of the public and the council, ask any questions we might have. And in order to kick off the first reading, I will kick it over to our village manager, Dave Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. There are two items on tonight's first reading agenda. The first is consideration of an ordinance amending certain traffic control provisions. Here to provide background information on this item is our Public Works Director, Andy Sikich.
Good evening, Andy.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening. As Dave said, tonight I'll be presenting several proposed traffic control revisions which were recommended by the Transportation and Parking Commission at their June meeting. The first item concerns two intersections along Franklin Street at Elm Street and Washington. The intersection of Elm and Franklin is currently a two-way stop with vehicles on Franklin stopping. This is immediately adjacent to Washington Park, which frequently generates heavy pedestrian traffic and on-street parking. The intersection of Washington and Franklin is currently a two-way stop with vehicles on Franklin stopping, just like Elm. And there is a marked school crosswalk on the north leg of Washington at this location with large parkway trees that can obstruct motorists' view of pedestrians waiting to cross. The recommendation is that both of these intersections be converted to all-way stops for pedestrian safety associated with the park entrance and the school crossing. The second item concerns the intersection of Lyman Avenue and Kenyon Street. So this area is south of 55th Street and east of Main, and the intersection of Lyman and Kenyon currently has no traffic control. When the county reconstructed 55th Street, right-in, right-out islands were constructed at Webster and Washington. So this now makes Lyman the last street where you can turn left off of 55th Street before you get to Main. And as a result, the traffic patterns in this neighborhood have changed a little bit, which have increased traffic on Lyman that used to take Washington or Webster. So the recommendation here is also an all-way stop at the intersection of Lyman and Kenyon. And the last item is regarding Grant Street at Douglas Road. Currently, this intersection is under two-way stop control with Douglas stopping. The intersection is used by parents and kids walking to both Leicester School and St. Mary's, and it is on a designated bike route. So the recommendation here is, again, to make this an all-way stop. This item had resounding support from the neighborhood. Staff received 35 resident responses, and only one was opposed. So there were 34 in favor and one opposed. So Again, the recommendation here is an all-way stop. And with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Andy. I'll start with members of the council, and then we'll go to the public. Any comments or questions from the council? Commissioner Gilmar?
Thank you. Yeah, no questions. I think these are really important intersections to add these stop signs to. I fully support these. I traverse many of those on a fairly frequent basis and agree with all of the recommendations, and I look forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Colavini?
Yeah, these were all no-brainer to me, and, the two-way stops or three-way stops can be very confusing, and in particular where we have pedestrian traffic and school children walking, we need to avoid that confusion. So I'm getting more used to all-way stops and being a little bit more comfortable, and I've never have to, is this person stopping or not? So, please, we're doing this.
Yeah, I completely agree. I live not far from several of these. The two on Franklin at Elm and Washington in particular, the traffic going north-south on both of those streets at Franklin, despite the park being right there, tends to go pretty fast. And the intersection at Grant is one that can get a little tricky as well on Douglas. So really happy to see these coming forward. Any comments or questions from members of the public on this item? Okay. Thank you, Andy.
And our final item on tonight's first reading is consideration of an ordinance extending a special use on Finley Road. Here to provide background information on this item is our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich.
Thank you, Manager Fielman. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. As Manager Fielman noted, it's a special use extension at 3131 Finley Road, which is at the southeast corner of Finley and Branding. The property consists of the Executive Towers building sort of on the bottom of the screen, and then a former restaurant site on the top of the screen there, outlined in blue. The Executive Towers West 3 building on the south, the owner of that purchased the restaurant property on the north there, and at the time of the proposal in early 2000, right before the pandemic, office trends were a lot more dense in the offices, so they were looking for a special use to put a parking lot on that adjacent site there. Shown here is the new parking lot. And since that time, obviously, with the pandemic, office usage has gone down, and so they have not been able to fill that office space to be able to need that parking lot at this point. So the ordinance at that time noted it within 1 year of completion of the parking lot, which was last year at this time, that they had to have a tenant to be able to use that. So that's why they're back to request a special use extension. So the petitioner is hoping to fulfill and provide additional office tenants in their building moving forward, and so they've requested a 1 year extension, which is allowed per the ordinance 5817. If there's any questions I can answer for the council, I'd be happy to do that at this time, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Stan. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Colavini?
Yeah, if you could, I know it's in the packet, but clarify for the public, what happens next year if they don't find a tenant for that space?
So there's another opportunity for another 1 year extension, and then if not, then they would have to construct a principal use on that property, which would be a building, or else they could potentially return it to green space and leave it as open space then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Members of the public? Please come on down.
Good evening. My name is Bill Elwood. I'm an executive vice president with CBRE. We're a commercial real estate company. I have been leasing in this market for 35 years, and in your village I've leased in excess of 4 million square feet. I've worked with Greg Beteloff, Michael Casa, and first of all, thank you for your service, and those were wonderful people to work with. As it relates to this site, pre-COVID, this was purchased. I actually convinced our client to purchase this because the trend was parking was moving too dense. We don't know where that's going, in the post-COVID world, but obviously office buildings are very dangerous places to go to because nobody's going to them. So, so it's still shaking itself out, and but we were fortunate. So State Farm left this asset and they moved to Dallas. But we are fortunate to expand T-Mobile in this building because we had this parking. Now, it remains vacant because other tenants haven't populated the building. But T-Mobile saw the commitment by this owner to buy a restaurant, tear it down, put in the infrastructure of a parking lot, and felt very comfortable when this building gets to full occupancy, they're not going to have any problems with parking. So the future density is still in question with other tenants, but as it relates to T-Mobile and future tenants for that building, we're very comfortable that we can accommodate their parking needs. Now, I can assure you that this owner didn't buy this lot for it to remain vacant forever. So if there is no demand in the future, I mean, it's very possible I could be back here a year from now asking for this variance, but as the future plays itself out, if we find that demand for parking has changed and automated cars are the wave of the future, there's certainly motivation to not carry a vacant lot and for infinity. So as it relates to today, we're seeking this variance. It's important, you know, as we market their space. So, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the public on this item? Well, for my part, I think the standard's met, and I look forward to approving the special use extension. Thank you, Stan.
And that ends our first reading tonight, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 7, the manager's report. Mr. Fieldman.
No report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8, the attorney's report. Ms. Petrarca.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Two items to present tonight. The first is an ordinance amending certain sections of Chapter 14 of the Municipal Code concerning traffic control provisions. And the second is an ordinance authorizing the extension of a special use ordinance number 5817 to permit an accessory parking lot use before principal use is established at 3131 Finley Road. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 9, public comments. This is the opportunity for members of the public to talk to the council about goings on in the community or any issues they might want to raise to us. We ask you to limit your comments to 5 minutes, and please come on down to the podium, give us your name, and we'd love to hear from you.
Good evening. Good to see you guys again, and great job tossing candy out. 4th of July, that was spectacular.
We never have enough.
Never have enough, that's right. So you can't be all the way down at the tracks, otherwise you've missed out on the first part of it. Several months ago, we talked about a Ukrainian aid event that we spun up, and it was fantastic. It was not anything to do for the Village of Downers Grove residents, other than get everybody involved, come together as a community, and do great things for our brothers around the world. Some of you guys were able to show up. That was great. And Chris, we're still waiting for the next gig. Can't wait. And you probably saw on social media maybe a month ago, our packages actually arrived. So like literally almost to the day, 3 weeks after we shipped the stuff, it was actually on the ground being handed out. So awesome, awesome. Along the way, one of my sponsors that we engaged was Watts of Love. And I brought Nancy here tonight, and in a minute she'll get up and talk a little more about our organization. But I just wanted to bring some of you to the attention of Watts of Love. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. They're right on the other side of the tracks, in that little cute little blue building there. And it's just amazing what this little solar light can do in the poorest poor locations around the world. Just to give an example, in Malawi, people that don't have electricity spend on average $153 per year for batteries for their light and flashlights, which obviously going to change those out every few days, and now that's leaching into the aquifers and everything. Or on kerosene, and obviously in the middle of the night, you're tipping that over, you're burning your thatch roof down, you're burning your kids, not to mention breathing it and all the other different things. So she has, in 12 years, created Watts of Love, and just an amazing woman, amazing people that she's surrounded herself with, partnerships around the world, been to dozens and dozens of countries. She takes this light, and for a value of $50, can give this to someone, one per household, and then with her financial literacy, I'm not going to steal all your wind here, train people how to, now that they're not spending that $153 per year, actually retrain and reinvest that money into their personal abode, whether it's buying chickens, you buy certain chickens, they multiply like rats, and then you get certain goats, you get pigs, you get a cow, which in our society is, you know, in their society is the equivalent of a college education. It's a big deal. Ironically, a very horrible thing's going on, and this is where it gets a little troubling to talk about, but there's millions of 10, 11, 12-year-old girls being sold as slaves and as brides, and it's just horrifying, for the same ironic $50. Nancy has 5 awesome sons, all went through the whole Downers school districts, and he just graduated from Columbia with a cinematography degree. He was over in Malawi, Africa for 8 weeks, and what came out of it was a 15-minute short film. And Nancy and crew are putting together an event a week from Thursday, July 21st, at the Tivoli, and I'm helping them frame it up and execute it and get some good sponsors. Rotary is one of our biggest sponsors. Tony Myers over at Northwestern Mutual is also a sponsor, and Thursday we'll announce a couple more. But anyways, I just wanted to introduce just overall what this is all about, and hopefully you guys can come. I'll send out another message. I know one of you already responded that you can't go, but we're going to have Mike play a 2-minute trailer of this short documentary. And before he does that, it's already been aired in the Cannes Film Festival. It's won 3 awards. It's up for a couple more. And then after this is done, Nancy will take a couple minutes just to kind of fill in some of the blanks and maybe talk a little more about the event and go from there. But one last thing, thinking about the poorest of the poor, you guys have all heard the saying, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And as a society, we can only be as strong as our weakest link, and the poorest of the poor is our weakest link. So if we can do anything to help these women, these children, the families around the world, I mean, we're all going to feel better about ourselves, and you'll sleep better at night. So thank you.
Thank you.
Some people say I'm defying culture, but we are defining it. I want to give these girls opportunity and freedom. When girls are educated, everything is possible.
Good evening. So thank you. I just got back from Malawi Sunday night, so I'm a little jet lagged still. I was with Chief Kachita. She's pretty much like the Martin Luther King of actually Africa. She's reversed over 5,000 child bride marriages. Malawi is the poorest, the 3rd poorest nation in the world, 3rd least electrified. Most of the people live on less than 94 cents a day. So ultra poverty is the child marriage is a direct result of that situation. Since I started Watts of Love back in 2013, I was fortunate enough to have the building across the street donated to me by a gentleman who used to own it. So that's our permanent home. We've delivered over 80,000 lights in 52 different countries, impacting over 500,000 people. Most people in Downers Grove do not know what we do. But when we go in and we deliver a solar light, it seems really simple. And to most of the women and the men that we give the light to have no education. They're already spending money on kerosene or batteries, and through pictures and really storytelling, we teach them just to start to save that money, and the box that we created is like their bank. So we say every day, instead of buying batteries, you're going to save your money. Within 7 days, they can buy a chicken. Again, to us, that seems like nothing, but to a woman who can't feed her children, who can't pay for the education, like in the child brides, the reversal of those marriages sound wonderful, but the reality is the parents did not want those children. They couldn't afford them. So now the chief has reversed the marriages, sent the girls home, and said to the parents, you need to educate your girls. The parents are saying, we can't. So I met with Chief during the pandemic. I was in Malawi, and she said, can you come and help? And we started delivering the lights in September. I can tell you I was with the girls who received the lights in September, and they went home after receiving their light and the financial literacy training, went home and taught their mothers, we need to start saving our battery money, and then in 7 days buy a chicken. Well, now, I was there last week, and there were women standing up saying, I have 10 chickens, I have guinea hens, I have so much money, and I wanted my money to start working for me. So she started creating, making rum right there. So now she has 2 rum distilleries, and she's flourishing. We've created this video to bring an awareness to a situation that not only happens in Malawi, but all over the world. So I would love your support to let the people of Downers Grove know what amazing things are coming out of a small little town outside of Chicago, and that we are part of something bigger and greater. And I also would like to invite you to join me in September in Malawi. So not only can you support Thursday night, but you can be part of this solution. It is pure joy, and I just would like to open up now if you have any questions for me.
Well, this isn't really a question and answer, but I want to thank you for the tremendous work that you're doing and for telling us about it so that we can help ensure that everyone in Downers Grove knows about it. Gandhi told us that the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats the most vulnerable. And you are elevating all of us, all of society, with your work. And we thank you. Thank you.
So I have a brochure, so you can take this and register online or not. Bring your children. It's definitely family friendly. I have 5 boys. They will be there. They're at Downers Grove North and have graduated, so hopefully they're going to be bringing their friends. So it's not an uncomfortable, it's slightly uncomfortable, but it's an appropriate movie for your children, so to see. It's good awareness for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments of a general nature?
That is really kind of hard to follow. Thank you. Thank you. Really, the butterfly effect. Just do a little bit and it grows and it grows. Unbelievable. So, I'm going to talk about a couple of things. My name is George Swimmer. I'm a retired CPA, like the gentleman that spoke earlier. Been in Downers Grove a number of years. Used to have an office on Main Street. Commissioner Glover, congratulations. Glad to see you on the council. I haven't been in front of the council for at least several years. It's been a while. So I'd like to tell you about a personal experience. My background is I'm a member of a group called the DuPage Railroad Safety Council. I've been a member of them, a founding member of them since 1994. So it's been a long time. But let me just tell you about a personal experience I had. In February, I'm watching the Winter Olympics upstairs. I'm in a tri-level house. I come downstairs in the family room, which is in the lower level. My wife's on the floor. Immediately, I know she had a stroke. It was like almost instinctive. I could tell by her eyes and everything. I called up the 911 number. I told the lady, my wife had a stroke. She says, are you sure it's a stroke? I said, I'm almost positive. I would say within 10 minutes, I live about a block and a half from the fire department. Within about 10 minutes, the fire department was there and had her out the door. She went to Good Sam Hospital. I followed the fire department down there. By the time I got to Good Sam Hospital, they had already had her in the scan. The Dr. Carmody, came in and said, your wife's had a stroke. If we don't put the solution in, I think it's called TPA, she'll never talk and she'll never walk again. So they put the solution in. They said part of the protocol is to, at Good Sam, which is a level 1 trauma center, is to helicopter her to Lutheran General in Park Ridge, which is what they did. And I would say within about 12 minutes, I went into the area where the doctor was, the nurses were. The flight crew came in. They helicoptered her to Park Ridge. They did surgery on her in Park Ridge. All this was within 3 hours. I mean, it started evolving about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. Within 3 hours, they had done the surgery. She was in Park Ridge. She was in the hospital there for 11 days. She came out. She's her stability has gotten a little bit worse, but cognitively she's 100%. I could tell you that because she's always telling me what to do, and that hasn't changed at all. I mean, so she's doing well. So a big shout out to and a big thank you to the Downers Grove Fire Department, unbelievable. To Good Sam Hospital, unbelievable. To the helicopter crew, unbelievable, and Lutheran General Hospital. And Lutheran General Hospital was the only hospital in the area that could do this type of surgery. And it just turned out that everything was working the way it should work. I mean, the ambulance came, there was no train backup. To my knowledge, there was none. Everything worked perfectly. So today, I'm on my way to the other side of the tracks here, and the gates go down, and there's an ambulance waiting to get through. An express train, seemed like an express train going inbound, passed by. The gates were down for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I thought for sure if a freight train would come through. Nothing came through. The gates went up. Freight trains are getting longer. They're extending to, in some areas, up to 1.5 miles, with actually a locomotive in the middle of the train, if you could believe that. They're getting slower. They're getting backed up. I was a member of the underpass group for Belmont with Mayor Krajewski and a number of other people. That underpass costs in excess north of $50 million, I believe. The only direct payment that the village of Downers Grove made, to my knowledge, was about $30,000 for lobbying to get some additional funding available. So we paid very, very little in direct payments. The state paid a lot, the federal government paid a lot, Burlington Northern didn't pay a lot, but they paid quite a bit, and it got done. When I first got involved in railroad safety many years ago, somebody from Downers Grove...
George?
Yeah.
We asked folks to keep it to 5. You're at about 6 now. Could you...
Wow, time flies. But I could tell you that presentation that was before me went quite beyond the time, too. But
we had a couple different folks that spoke.
Okay, that's it. I'm done.
And thank you, George. And I want to first thank God that your wife is recovering well. Secondly, yes, those seconds count, and it's tremendously important that that our fire department and our EMS are as great as they are. Number one, we're blessed to have Good Samaritan Hospital, and the underpass is a tremendous benefit to the entire community. Okay. Any other public comment?
David Rose. By tradition, these council meetings start with reciting the nation's so-called Pledge of Allegiance. Such formalities, the pledge and, for example, the playing of the national anthem and military jet flyovers at sports events, on occasion generate displays of dissent. Yet only in recent years has it become abundantly clear that these formalities belie a hypocrisy that the hypocrites are now working hard to maintain and extend. The key hypocrisy of the pledge, of course, is that substantive latter part, the phrase, "one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." That part has never been literally true, and to the extent people have been fighting to make it true, we can now recognize many of those who claimed it true in spite of its falsity do not want to remove the falsity or the hypocrisy. What we really have are two versions of pledge. One version omits certain key words and phrases from the substantive part. A white, evangelical, Christian, conservative nation under the God of that tradition, but also populated by other lesser peoples to whom the white Christian men of property, the capitalists, grant life, liberty, and justice to the extent they deem individuals among those peoples deserving of such grants. The other version omits different words and phrases. A nation of many peoples, cultures, and faiths, diverse yet individual because they pledge and commit that liberty and justice are equal for each and every one throughout its polity and economy. The two versions fundamentally conflict, and with our upcoming election, we'll discover which of the two has more supporters. That's what people really mean when they talk about our democracy being at stake. And yes, as I keep pointing out, the issue of environmental sustainability is central here. That our way of life is not environmentally sustainable is the material reality forcing this political economic conflict to the fore in all its intensity and danger. It's what prevents the two versions from continuing their barely peaceful and hypocritical coexistence. It's a fundamental reason the notion of American exceptionalism is viewed increasingly with disdain and a rebuke around the world. So when you recite the pledge, think about which version you support. The period of the current pledge's hypocritical ambiguity is coming rapidly to a close. To which point I would add this. With the tragic addition on July 4th to the list of the nation's mass shootings, in a nearby community whose residents also likely view the place as heaven on earth, how should one interpret the council chair's comment at last week's meeting that the nation has a problem? Since the council chair has demonstrated a little political courage or insight on other subjects before council, it's not surprising that he doesn't in this case either. But his reticence also likely stems in no small part from the fact he's a member of the major political party whose supporters recite Pledge Version 1, and in Illinois are led by a candidate for governor who wants to return life to those good old days. Guns blazing if need be, which makes a mass shooting such as on July 4th simply unavoidable collateral damage. American capitalism is leaving behind increasingly more people. Most well known are two distinct subgroups, working class whites, both rural and urban, and black and brown people, also both rural and urban. If the black and brown people are willing to work for less money or are more qualified, little wonder white people are inclined to view them as a threat. Race, not social class, and never the workings of American capitalism itself is to be understood as the preeminent social issue in the U.S. With U.S. domination of the global economy withering as we speak, not only are those already left behind unlikely to catch up, even people who thought they were firmly in the middle class with an above-average income will likely find themselves getting left behind. Such dismal prospects clearly weigh heavily on the mental health of the nation's young people, especially its males. All of which means the different Pledge of Allegiance versions convey an unavoidable quandary. Excuse me. And no politician has come up with an acceptable solution because no politician is prepared to talk honestly about the nation's way of living being environmentally unsustainable. Instead, we get the lying and deception such as that to which residents are subjected regularly by the nonsense uttered by council and staff. To council, ever more taxable square footage, ever more consumption-based sales tax are by definition good and have nothing whatsoever to do with environmental sustainability, that is, with an unsustainable rate of resource consumption. Council and staff's approach to worsening emergency is to behave as if it doesn't exist. On such dubious thinking does the prospect for future national well-being die by the attrition of self-destruction at best, by violence and civil war at worst.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Hearing none. There is no mayor's report tonight, and it brings us to council member reports. This is an opportunity for council members to report on goings-on in the community and other allied organizations. I will start to my right with Commissioner Cullivan.
No report, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit.
No report, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Commissioner Wallace.
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Glover.
No report, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
I get the G's mixed up sometimes. Commissioner Gilmartin, I had to pause there.
No report, thank you.
Thank you. I have no report as well. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.